Welcome to another Conversations to Innovate session hosted by the Innovator Trust. As part of Youth Month, we focused our online efforts and content towards celebrating youth and encouraging the youth of South Africa to take action and make moves towards creating the future they want to see. Every month, we host an online engagement session as part of our Conversations to Innovate series, which is a series that was started by the Innovator Trust for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs to talk about all the issues that lead into entrepreneurship, all the stuff that perhaps you don't find in a textbook or in a lecture room. This is the forum for you to speak out loud, let your voice be heard, and also get your questions and concerns dealt with. For this June, we're covering the topic of helping youth understand their strengths for the future of work, how they can identify their strengths while they're young and turn them into skills that will be valuable and work for them in the future. We know that the situation for many youth and the reality of life and society and the economy in South Africa at the moment can be quite demotivating. With nearly 2/3 of South African youth unemployed, it does not take much convincing that what our country needs is drastic action and greater investment overall to address this issue. The Innovator Trust has always believed that the potential for that change, for new growth and innovation, lies with the youth themselves, with you. They are the ones passionate enough and talented enough and imaginative enough to dare to dream and effect the change our country needs in the future. Joining us to table this topic this evening are two extraordinary young gentlemen. Lubabalo Njanji is the founding partner of Devia Pty Ltd. He's an accomplished executive with 17 years of experience in the ICT industry. He's led very complex business transformation initiatives over the years and built very strong leadership capabilities and skills in the space across both public and private sector client engagements. Give a warm welcome to Luba as we can address him this evening. Luba, please put your hand up for us so we know who we're looking at. If you can, show some love, guys, in the comments section to Luba. And then also joining us this evening is his co-founder, Batolile Mabinya, who has spent over 13 years in the ICT industry. He's worked across markets across the African continent, and also as a founding partner of Devia. Batolile believes that the local ICT industry needs new institutions that will push the boundaries of African innovation and value creation. As a computer scientist by trade, Batolile believes that businesses can benefit from utilizing the principles of complexity and adaptation in order to survive and thrive in a world that is increasingly unpredictable and full of opportunity, as we believe. He hopes to contribute to the success of the ICT industry and dreams of one day establishing a school that will teach young people computer science and philosophy in order to prepare them for the fourth industrial revolution and beyond. I found that very inspiring from your profile, Bax. So guys, let's give a warm virtual round of applause and welcome to Bax and Luba. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Wade, and it's really a privilege for us to be part of this very, very important, conversation and discussion. I think in this conversation, I will go first and maybe share some, opening thoughts.
Yes.
And it's quite an important topic because, let's not forget, we are right in the middle of a completely new industrialization that we are seeing throughout the world, which is powered by technology. We are in the midst of very interesting aspects of geopolitics and wars and talks of nuclear weapons. We are right in the middle of a pandemic. We hope to see the end of it, but seemingly there are new waves that keep on coming. Not only with COVID, but now we have a monkeypox, and who knows what is next. So the world that we are living in, broadly speaking at a macro level, is really becoming more and more complex. With that complexity, I think what's really clear is the fact that everything that is happening around us is connected. So I do want to plant a few seeds which hopefully will trigger some thoughts and questions that will make for good discussion and debate later on.
Yeah.
I really want to start off with this idea of strengths and how we perceive strengths. Now, I want to start with an example here and then delve into the broader concept that I want to share. If you look at someone who's well known, I'm sure everyone on this webinar knows who Usain Bolt is. I mean, Usain Bolt is known for his sprinting abilities, the fastest man that has ever lived. There is absolutely no doubt that one of his physical strengths is that he is able to run very fast. Now that's good, and that is something that all of us admire about him. But let's not forget, a strength only comes to life when it is applied in a given context. So if we were to drop Usain Bolt in the middle of the ocean and say to him, your life depends on your survival skills and your ability to swim, I really wonder how important that strength of running fast will become in that given context. The point that I'm making is context matters. And what happens around us is really quite important in how we understand ourselves and therefore how we understand our strengths, but more importantly, how we can apply those strengths to create value at an individual, but more importantly, at a collective level. So you are there in the middle and you are good at certain things. And there are certain things that you are yet to discover about yourself. Perhaps you haven't been given the opportunity to discover those things. And through life, like all of us, we keep on discovering new things about ourselves. Now that's good and that's perfectly normal. But let's not forget what is happening around us at a completely different layer. If you look at how work and the economy is evolving and the pace at which things are moving, it's important for us to have some level of understanding and appreciation of what is going on at that layer. And I'll delve into some of the important concepts. And Luba will give some very specific examples that we are sort of picking up and thinking about, and certain things that we are doing to try and cultivate these emerging opportunities. And then last but not least is what is happening at a societal level. I've already mentioned some of these key things that are happening. Those are important. They are important for you and your strengths, wherever you may be, whatever aspirations you may have regarding your future. So I really want to really plant this seed that view your strengths as not as a static phenomena, but rather as something that is fluid, that is deeply connected and integrated to the context in which you operate. But more importantly, because we're talking about the future of work and skills, as something that is connected to the world of work and the economy, but also broader society and our planet. Now let's go.
Bex, talking about context, I want to think, set the stage for you guys and ask how you found yourself in this context. How did you guys end up here?
Well, thanks, Wade, for that question. I mean, it's a very important one. Luba and I have worked together in a previous company for 10 years together. I found Luba at this multinational company and working for a very well-established company in the IT industry is a very good thing. There's a lot of things that you learn. There's a lot of opportunities for you to actually grow. But when you sit back and really critically, and the key word here is critically, look at where you are and what is happening around you, you almost feel compelled to say, there are certain things that I can do beyond what my job description tells me to do at a company. And for me, this is what really differentiates entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs seem to be always attracted to solving problems that are well beyond the confines of a company. Maybe I'll also let Luba come in and have his say on what sparked this idea of us being here.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, Wade and to everyone on the call, and thanks for the opportunity. It's what Bax refers to as this non-static nature of developing or uncovering your own talents, is that you get to a point as you transition and you begin your career. In the beginning, it's all about getting work and finding that first opportunity. The second phase of your career is about building connections, because this is where you build your social capital, right? And a lot of other opportunities emerge, and you uncover even bigger things that you can accomplish. And because of this unique context that we talk about, you start finding that because I come from where I come from, the opportunity to solve real problems that make sense for me and the context that I come from becomes real. And it's not the same for someone who is in Europe, who occupies the same position, while we may be doing the same job, but the calling inside and our talents become unique. And for us, it sort of happened almost at the same time. And when we tapped each other on the shoulder, he was thinking the same thing that I was thinking about. And we sort of fell in love with this idea that we want to go solve bigger problems than us, and we need to collaborate and find each other. And that's how we ended up where we are today.
Well, I think there's some key nuggets that came out there. Definitely looking at your surroundings, seeing where you're at, and then finding what those opportunities are. Always having your eyes open to what is happening around you. And I guess not always looking at the negative stuff, but at the opportunity aspect that exists, regardless of where it is you might find yourself, regardless of how so-called dire your situation might be, your background. It doesn't have to determine the opportunities that are available to you and how you sort of grab them and make use of them.
No, absolutely. That's so true what you are saying, Wade. And I think to what Luba is saying, if you're an entrepreneur and you have this calling and you're always on the lookout for opportunities, that can happen anywhere, regardless of. There's no set formula to say that you've got to pass matric with these marks, you've got to have maths and science and get straight A's, and you've got to go to university and to specific universities, and you've got to work for certain companies, and that's equals success. You've got to come from a certain neighborhood. All of those things ultimately don't matter. We see this all the time, not only in ourselves and our own experience, but in the nature of the work that we do and the fantastic and brilliant people that we actually work with. So that's incredibly true. I do want to also touch on a few other, concepts. I spoke about societal level. These things are important to understand. They are important for all of us to understand, regardless of where we are. We have to have an appreciation, for example, of issues of climate change. Why? Because our future depends on it. And our understanding of it can help us place ourselves in this evolving future and be part of the solutions that are necessary to create sustainability in the world, both at a macro level and at a micro level. Because when you then go and build businesses, whether it's a micro enterprise in your township or your location, or you are building something that is a lot grander and is a global institution, issues of climate change are going to have a fundamental impact on your business and how it evolves. Also, we talk about, issues of finding life and getting humans to be a multi-planetary species. Now, this may sound something that is so far removed from someone who comes from Kugwala in the Eastern Cape in a rural village. But the beauty about the world and this industrialization and multiple layers that we are seeing is that the ability to go from where you are into these massive visionary things that could have a fundamental impact on humanity is a lot quicker than what it used to be a century or so ago, or even a couple of decades ago. So these things are really quite important for us to understand, place ourselves in it. Now, of course, this here is not an exhaustive list. Issues of population decline, if you listen to, Elon Musk and you look at how individuals now view families and reproduction, it's a very, very interesting thing, because here we talk about the future workforce, we talk about future consumers and customers. These things are important for us to have some level of a grasp in order for us to see and have an appreciation of the opportunity and how that can be translated to our immediate context where we operate. Now, enough has been said about things such as the fourth industrial, revolution. So I'm not going to delve too much, into that. The work that we do at Devia and the kind of people that we work with, which is predominantly young people, we predominantly focus on this concept of skills, particularly digital skills, not IT skills, but digital skills, and focused on creating capability for this emerging new digital economy that we are now seeing. And we'll give some specific examples of what is actually starting to happen in this space. And things are changing at an accelerated pace. And this change is bringing both opportunity, but also a little bit of pain for those that are so invested in the status quo of how things have always operated. There are new jobs that are emerging. And it's clear because we talk to businesses, we talk to people who are in need of these skills. And they're always telling us that they can't find these skills. And what's interesting in the South African context is, Wade, you spoke about the fact that we have 2/3 of our young people in South Africa not working, but yet at the same time, we have the complete opposite of people saying we can't find the skills. So clearly, there's an issue that we've got to be able to resolve at an economy level, particularly when it comes to ensuring that we are able to produce the right kind of skills, take advantage of these new and emerging, opportunities. So I really wanted to sort of set that context. And now Luba, I'm sure, has his own nuggets and specifics that will tease out a lot more things that we can then talk about, debate on later on. Luba.
Thank you, Bax. I think, that slide really, sums it up that, we come from an education system, which even by the words of Nelson Mandela, that education is the most powerful weapon. All of us either have we've passed matric, we've gone to university or a technicon, and we've done it so exceptionally well, yet we find it extremely difficult to connect with work opportunities, despite some of the hard work that we've done. And we've done all of the things that we've been told that if we do and go to university, we will actually get a job. So we've got lots of these youngsters that talk to us. We probably get over hundreds a month of inquiries of young people looking for opportunities. Yet on the other side of the equation, we've got employers and people who are wanting to partner with these new emerging skills that Bax is referring to. It tells us that our education system indeed, is facing some significant challenges. Now, if you look into the future and say a child that is going into school this year will probably retire in 2079. Now, who knows what 2079 is going to look like? On the right-hand side, these are my kids. The one on the right started school about 3 years ago. And he'll probably finish and retire around that age. But there's an idea in terms of what we will tell us that in 2079, there's so many predictions in terms of what will happen in 2079. What we know for sure is that we've got to continue educating young people. We've got to continue to educate our children and teach them the potential to accomplish, rather than, having them reciting facts and procedures. We've got to teach them new skills to solve real problems, which is the stuff that Bax was referring to earlier. We've got to teach them to design new things and connect with the world. Because if we do that, we know that, we will not be replaced by machines in the next coming years. And that is the reality, because there are these, conversations that ultimately machines, with the fourth industrial revolution, humans are going to be replaced by machines. But where we are looking at this opportunity is that if we teach young people to discover new things, to create new things and write what they see, what they know, what they understand about their own context, their own culture, right? This is where new opportunities emerge. And that's the birth of entrepreneurship. And that is where, no one can take that away from you, because if we really teach our young people all of the stuff that I talk about on the left, this is the biggest thing. Now, I want to talk about social interaction, right? Machines can't do the stuff we do: emotional intelligence, connection. Even Siri, for those who have an iPhone, when you ask Siri, how am I feeling today? He will tell you that, or she will tell you that, sorry, I can't help you. So we now know that machines cannot do what humans, the level of human connection that is required. All the connections, the people you meet, the interaction we are having today is a connection that will spark new opportunities. And what Bax was referring to earlier, to say it will always, the value, it doesn't matter where you are, new opportunities are going to emerge. And we've got to embrace it and understand that these human and social interactions are critical in creating the new things that we want to accomplish in our own lives. If we look at what's happening in the work itself, Bax put up all of these new roles that are coming up, but work is changing. The world around us. So if you look at yourself in the center and you look in the second circle that was moving around you, the nature of work and the economic opportunity is fundamentally changing. The fact that we are connected all the time. I'm in Port Elizabeth. Bax is sitting in Johannesburg. I had my two colleagues with me. We've got other colleagues that are sitting in all other parts of the world today. As a small company as we are embracing the anytime, anywhere work that is happening around us. Tasks are completely fragmented, meaning new work opportunities are emerging. We've got a team in our organization that is working in India, that is doing a piece of the work in the value chain of what we offer in the market. We've got teams that are sitting and partnerships that are sitting in Nigeria, in Cameroon, and other parts of the continent that are part of the value chain that we are creating. So the nature of the work in today's environment is changing. So how we are going to look at work opportunities must also be reflective of that, right? New forms of work, we talk about this project-based work. People are comfortable and wanting to be flexible and only want to do the work as they please. We've seen how the Uber model is really giving rise to what is known as on-demand work. It's happening in the world of technology today. As software engineers work on demand models. I've given an example here of a company, you can go look it up, Top Coder. over 750,000 software engineers are working at Topcoder. I'm not even talking about data scientists. Now, if we just open our eyes and what is happening to the world and the opportunity that is beyond the borders around yourself, and you start to say, I want to be a top engineer at Topcoder and interact with those engineers to solve problems in my local environment, in my own context, I think you suddenly open up a new world of what is happening. You look at new platforms that are taking place right now, TaskRabbit in the US, Upwork, and freelancers. This takes opportunities at a grassroots level where people such as handymen, people, moving household equipment can participate in a digital economy and, create new things and, participate and have economic activity. So this is what we are talking about. But what is very clear for us as we observe the world is that there's simply not enough jobs in the companies that we see. And we've seen this in South Africa. There's not enough jobs, but there's enough work. There's enough work in the world today to go around and everybody to participate in the economic opportunity. So we need to understand this, the nature of work. So around us and the wheels that Baxter was showing earlier, and this is the specifics that we're referring to really touch on that. One of the things my mother always tells me is that, we are all born geniuses. And none of us, whether we haven't figured out what our real talent is, we spoke about our talents not being static, but I always get the question in terms of what is my talent? What is it that I'm good at? Right? For me, it's all about what is my natural preference? What is it that energizes me? What gives me this deep satisfaction of wanting to be alive and do the things that I do very, very well? And you've got to get to that point of finding what your natural talent is, what your born genius is about, right? And the environment that you become and you work around is actually going to help you harness your talent. I worked in a corporate for about 16 years. I had a great time there, but it got to a point where my talents became bigger than, the things that I was doing and the work and the tasks that I was doing in that environment, right? And it forced me to actually go out to be able to creatively come up with something that could create new value and new opportunities. So if really all of us have got this power in ourselves of this talent and intellect, because it doesn't mean that because we are told the hierarchy of intellect is that those that are doing maths are better than those who are doing humanities. I can tell you right now, top design thinking specialists are not necessarily coming from a maths literacy background. People who are designing and UX designers don't necessarily come from that space, right? So you can be, the hierarchy is no longer that you need to be a mathematician to bring value out of data. Absolutely not. Data scientists just need to understand their own context and bring value out of the data that is being analyzed. Data in itself has no power unless the people behind it are able to analyze. That is the genius. Now, I'll tell you, I come from a rural village in Engcobo. No one would understand Engcobo better than me when I sit in Johannesburg and having a conversation, right? And the ability to draw out, patterns of what potentially could be happening in that area, only I can understand, or someone who comes from the same place as I do. So background and where you come from does not necessarily mean that the economic opportunities are closed for you, and therefore your intellect is less than a person who comes from Johannesburg. It's completely incorrect. And we've seen how technology is beginning to do away with that. People now are able to sit at home in their rural village. As long as they've got connectivity, they can participate in the world economy. So for us, we've got to realize that we've got our own born talents, and we've got to find a mechanism and a way to bring those out so that we can start building new things for ourselves. Now, I want to talk about,
just to add a question on there, sorry to interrupt you, but just to add a question on there in terms of what you were saying about the environment and then understanding what those talents are and cultivating an environment around them and sort of following the preference. I guess many young people may also come across the issue of perhaps being interested in more than one thing or preferring to do more than one thing, and then not really knowing what to pursue and whether that thing they're interested in or passionate about is actually the thing that they can monetize. So I think a twofold question here. How important is passion, firstly? And secondly, how do you, once understanding interest and preference, decide on one thing?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one, but I'll tell you my story. I mean, I'm a passionate sports person. I love sports. I thought I was going to be a professional sports person, and I always gravitated to something that had sport in it. And I never did technology. I never studied technology. I studied economics. But through friends of mine that I was playing sports with, I got connected to a technology company that I ended up working. I hated the thought that I was going to be in IT. And I ended up in the largest technology company in South Africa. So one of the first customers are in the sports area. So my connections connected me to new opportunities. So I'm never blind to what I'm passionate about. I continue playing touch rugby, meeting, and it connected me to a completely different world, in a new world. And I could spot and started connecting dots about where my journey was taking me, because it started off, at university, and these were my friends. Those friends connected me to new opportunities, and eventually I could find my own talent, that even in the sports space, I was the guy who wanted to solve the problem. And it became bigger than, am I an IT person? Am I not a technician? Am I not this? You started defining yourself a lot more different and finding your talents a lot more different than what ordinarily you would see your talent. So my advice is look broader than, the small stuff, yes, but value the connections a whole lot more, because they will direct you to where your passion really is and to uncover that. I don't know, I'll ask Bex maybe to chip in as well.
Yeah, if I can chip in here, Wade, I think this is really an important question. My grandfather lived a rural life in the Eastern Cape, largely uneducated, became an entrepreneur, and by rural standards was considered wealthy because he had livestock and was able to send his children with my grandmother to school. My father was one of those children who went to school and was fortunate enough to go to university. His context was fundamentally different to that of my grandfather. It was acceptable for him to find a job, which he did, and he only had one job his entire life. For over 40 years, he was an academic. And for him, that was great. I look at myself now, and some of the things that I've done. Yes, Devier takes up the bulk of my time on a day-to-day basis. But there are certain other things that I am also doing, which I'm very interested in. And every day I'm finding more and more that they begin to connect with all the rest of the things that I'm doing. So there's this golden thread. I get involved with academia because I gravitate towards that kind of thinking and approach in academia. I find myself getting involved with business schools. I'm attracted naturally to those things. So the context for me allows me to think differently to that of my father and my grandfather, and understand that yes, it is acceptable and quite frankly important for me to wear different hats, but yet maintain this golden thread, which is fueled by what I would call this passion that we are talking about. But the question we should be asking ourselves is this: if money was no object and we had all the options available to us at an individual level, what is it that we would do with our lives, right? What is it
I
that
love
you would
that
really,
question.
really do?
I love that question. I'd like everybody who's on the webinar right now to pop your answers into the comment section. Let's see what it is. If money were not a constraint or a factor in your life, what is it that you'd wake up every day to do? Love that.
Absolutely. So for me, passion absolutely is important. But sometimes what happens to us is we bribe ourselves out of this passion, because we then engineer excuses that are perhaps driven by the reality and the constraints that we are faced with on a day-to-day basis, because we have to eat, we have to do this and that and that and that. And before you know it, 10 years, 15 years has gone past, and you haven't really lived your sort of true self, whatever that may be. It may not lead you to being the wealthiest person in the world, but in terms of who you are and who you want to be, we must be careful in terms of how we nurture, that passion. So those are my comments.
I'm interested in the answers.
Awesome. Yeah, we got some interesting ones coming up here. Sarah saying, I'd wake up every day to help people in whatever way that I can. Quite an admirable one over there. Unam Ntantala telling us livestock farming in the Eastern Cape. Okay, interesting. Sizwe, CEO and founder of real estate business. Okay. Belinda coming through there with helping people. So I think that's really a driving force. Agriculture coming up as well. Livestock farming, football, singing, farming. A lot of farmers, farmers in the room tonight. And I think that it just attests to what you were saying. The world has indeed changed, Bex, in terms of not needing to pigeonhole yourself anymore. It's no longer the case that you need to focus on one thing for the next 20 years or 30 years. I think if we were to ask from the people who are online tonight how long they've been in their jobs, it would be a clear indication to see that the days of spending 40 years and getting a golden pen and a handshake are no longer the case. If anything, stats are showing that people change their careers now every 2 to 3 years. And it might not just be an industry change, it might not just be a role change, it might be a complete role shift. And I think that is very possible today, where 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even that might not have been the case.
It's funny, today I'm in Port Elizabeth and we are graduating young entrepreneurs that have been with us, and we've been doing training and connecting them with global startups. And this conversation about passion, and there's one guy in the group who's he loves design, and he's done philosophy as a study. He just wants to create video. He loves animation, and he was telling me his story that he dropped out of computer science, yet today the stuff that he's able to do with a computer are beyond this world. And his passion is about creating new things, and he will find a mechanism, he'll find an app that does something for free. So he is showing me all the free apps that he uses to create all of his stuff. So it's quite fascinating when we talk about this golden thread of passion. But there's something far bigger than that, is we've been doing this work now for 5 years and working with young people. And one of the things that we stumbled across is this idea that all human beings are, we are set in life to make a contribution that we've been doing for the past few years now, working with young people and in our skills programs, where we talk about this game changer index, where we help young people identify their strengths. This is not a personality assessment. This is to find what is it that energizes Wade? What are you inclined to do and become? And it centers around these five personas, right? Other people are inclined to become game changers. They want to create new things and come up with original ideas, and their proclivity sits there. Others are strategists. They make sense of the world, right? They are able, to engage others and set some sort of a direction of where things are going. Other people just want to get things done, right? They don't care how it looks like. They don't care who came up with the vision, but they want to get stuff done. And they move very quickly, they implement, and they want to deliver tangible outcomes. Then you've got guys like me, who's a polisher. They want to polish things, and want to make things look pretty, and want to make the world and improve on things. I heard farmers, people wanting to help people. Your natural inclination in life and where you make an impact sits there. Then you've got playmakers who almost orchestrate the future. They want to see other people get better. When we are sitting in a team, they want to know that Wade is also connected. Can we make him part of the team? Can we pull him part of the team? Now, this is a powerful tool to help one understand themselves so that they can begin to know where to place themselves and use their passion in a much more effective way. And I can tell you, some of the youngsters that we've been working with, it even helps at a basic level in terms of just framing your profile, where certain people, when they write their CVs and what they're good at, it really doesn't come out. Now, here's an example of one of, Ubusisiwe Dlamini, who completed a data engineering course with us. You can see she scores very, very high on being a game changer and being a polisher. Now, this tells you already she can, as a data engineer, what kind of impact can she make in her work, in society? Now, she can begin now to frame her strengths in a much more meaningful way, given the skills that she's got. Now, the Game Changer Index is the most powerful tool, because now we know Busisiwe, wherever she is and wherever she works now, she's not only trying to figure her life in terms of where can I be, and you spend the 2 years trying to, am I in the right company? Am I in the right function? You can call it out and say, this is where I want to make the change. I want to use data to solve crop production in the Eastern Cape. You can frame the problem and be able to be specific about how you want to solve problems. And that's how we are working with young people, to help them identify their unique strengths, but are they actually going to apply their skills and create new things for themselves? It becomes a lot clearer. We do this in our work with our own employees at work, because we find it creates a sort of a reflection. You look yourself in the mirror and you say, what kind of team are we? When we collectively pull all of these proclivities, we find that we've got very few implementers, and that's why we are not able to move fast with our products getting out to the market. We need to find young people that are, passionate about, and their energy is drawn in wanting to implement for outcomes. So this is what we are using on a day-to-day basis. And Busisiwe is also a polisher. So she knows I can help companies improve on their performance, particularly as it relates to data-driven things, because that's my natural inclination. So this for us is one of the most powerful things in how you turn what we talked about today, turning these strengths into real skills that young people can use and apply on a day-to-day basis in new opportunities that they're working on. I specifically mentioned earlier, we've just launched this was the first virtual entrepreneurship bootcamp that we did. We started this bootcamp at the end of last year. We are working with the iHub here in Port Elizabeth. They've got young people who've just graduated. And the whole point is that we don't want to train young people for an exit for a job. We want to create new opportunities for them to actually start their businesses. So we've taken a journey of simulating, new business ideas with them over this bootcamp. We've run a bootcamp from the beginning of the year. Right now, we are doing a graduation where we're taking their companies and connecting them, to new opportunities globally. Firstly, we've got to work with this idea. An entrepreneurial mindset is about thinking about problems, not only in your space, but look at it in a big way. Understanding why you're doing this business and have the correct ideas, because sometimes you've got to test your ideas, whether your idea is right. Everybody thinks they've got the best idea. They're the next Elon Musk. But sometimes we've got to test that against why you want to do that. Building and testing the prototypes of your idea and making sure that this idea truly is meaningful. Can you test the idea against the market? Who would buy this if it was there? What value would it solve? Right? What problems would you solve? And are those problems big enough for your product to scale? Would you have customers? Right? And we test this back and forth to sort of understand whether your idea really could attract funding, could attract new customers so that you can get going, because some businesses don't need funding. Once you get the first order, you get that customer to come and refer you to the next opportunity. It's about this mindset. It's a shift of not wanting, once I've finished with my data scientists, what is it that I can solve in my municipality with the rims of data that they have? What problems could I solve? Is it traffic problems? Is it a parking problem? What is it? So you start thinking creatively because of the problems that you encounter on a day-to-day basis. It allows for this cognitive flexibility that you have to apply to these situations on a day-to-day basis. And we are working with young people, and it's happening today. So we've taken young people who weren't sure about whether they are talented or not, and find their talent and find where they need to go, train them in a particular skill where we know that the skill is in high demand, put them in a boot camp and connect them with global entities around the world, because they must see the opportunity as a big opportunity beyond themselves to solve bigger problems and come back and build their businesses. So we are excited and wanting to help young people. It doesn't matter where you are. This is done virtually. We've got our own customer success managers who are championing this and working and supporting young people in their own endeavors. So these are programs that are available today that people can associate with, and we'd like to connect with more young people to give them these kinds of opportunities to sort of help them, identify their strengths, turn their strengths into, capable skills that can be used to generate new things. I think I'll leave it there for today, and I'm sure there's a lot to talk about. The conversation never ends. We sort of excited, and we would like to share more of this conversation. So I really want to open it up, and maybe there are more questions and people would like to extend the dialogue further.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luba, and to Bax as well. We are just going to jump into a quick poll and test out this functionality quickly before we dive into additional questions, topics, concerns from everybody that's in the audience. Into our strengths, into skills poll, if all of you can please take a moment to just answer this quickly. Number one, do you think entrepreneurship is a viable career option? Yes or no? Number two, do you think the ICT sector is where you will most likely get a job? And I think these are great questions for us to pose to our guests after this as well. But if everybody who is online can just answer the poll right now, we'd love to get this data out from you. And then on to number three, how much information do you have about the future of work? Number four, what other topics would you like for us to cover in our webinars? Awesome. So if you can give that poll a go while you guys are online. And then I think just to jump into something that you were saying there, Luba, in terms of opportunities, they're readily available. The environment has changed, the world has changed, and so the requirements are different. We understand that we need to look inward first into our own scenarios, into our own environments, and see what problems there are that exist and use that as opportunities for us to provide solutions. One question I have is the issue of access. In a country like South Africa, where perhaps even something as simple as access to internet is still very much an issue, what is it that you would say one needs at the most basic, maybe the top three things to consider in getting started? If I were to say, okay, I found this opportunity, I'd like to turn it into something that I can make money from. What are those top key, basic, core things that I need to be able to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Wade. I'll ask Bex also to come in as well. I mean, I get to interact with lots of young people, and one of the things we have lots of challenges, and there are lots of stumbling blocks. And I'll tell you, so many, everybody talks about access to capital. We don't have, government doesn't provide this X, Y, Z. Yet, if you open social media, you can open Twitter, you can open social media, people do have access. People do have access to the internet. I think young people need guidance in prioritization and knowing what is meaningful for them. People need access to skills to know that when I'm in Facebook, I can go to Marketplace and be able to trade in Marketplace and create, some money for myself. How do I write content about the places that I come from and be a creative writer that is available on Upwork and generate, even if it's 50 Rand an hour that you're charging for, but someone out there in the world is really seeing value in what you are doing. I mean, I was listening on radio the other day, a lady who had been unemployed for a long time. She continued blogging about the space she was in and, and the creative nature of that space. And she got her first call from a guy in Switzerland who wanted to connect with her on Instagram. Now, Instagram, people use it as come and see what I'm doing and trying to brag about a life that you don't have. But there's a trade world behind Instagram that people need to realize. So social platforms also bring you opportunities. And I think what young people really need to do, they need to be helped in understanding what these platforms and the power of these platforms and how they can turn these into opportunities for themselves. So I understand we have challenges, and I don't think we are going to go through this without challenges, of course, but we must find opportunities in the midst of the challenges that we've got and be able to prioritize on things that matter for ourselves. There are micro courses. If you're unsure about something, you can find a course, less than 3 courses that are available online, and be able to create these micro skills that get you going. And on the next day, things get a little bit better. So I just want to maybe put those, that on one comment from my side, and maybe our specs, maybe you can chip in 1 or 2 as well.
Yeah, Lubs, I think you've really captured it very well. I don't really have much more to add. Of course, there are things that could always be done at a macro and a policy level to make access, easier. So access could always be easier, particularly for those that find themselves in underdeveloped locations and rural areas. And this is why also, Wade, a lot of the work that we do, which is predominantly focused on skills and building capability, we've recognized this. And we think we've been creative enough to create mobile digital labs that are off the grid, that have internet, wireless internet that we can take to anywhere around the country, including rural areas, to give people access to these tools, these courses, these experiences that others enjoy in the main cities like Johannesburg. And the results have been really absolutely fantastic. But what Luba is saying in terms of, some of the basic things that are available that we are seeing, it's really a question of how do we make use of those to get going? Because entrepreneurship and creating and taking advantage of opportunities is more about getting going than finding the perfect answer and solution.
I love what you said there, Bax. It's more about getting going. And I think you're speaking to the converted, because 93% answered yes to seeing entrepreneurship as a viable career option, which is an indicator, I think, just as to how much the world has changed, and then how much societally as people we've changed with the world. If we can just pull up those stats again over there. I'm not sure if you guys can see on your side. Yeah, 93% of people saying, do you think entrepreneurship is a viable career option? Yes. Do you think the ICT sector is where you will most likely get a job? 86% saying yes to that. You mentioned earlier on, Bax, I think it was you or Luba, you spoke about the difference between digital skills and IT skills. I think more and more as the world becomes more technologically advanced and we become more tech savvy, and I guess more and more babies and toddlers will be born into a purely tech world, the skills that we need to survive might become different in the future. What is that distinction between the digital skills that you mentioned and IT skills, and why are they so important that we acquire them now?
Sure, that's a very important question, Wade. So if you look at IT traditionally and what it's all about, it's really about ensuring that there are systems available with enough processing power and storage and a mechanism to get to those technological resources in a secure way, so that we could do what we needed to do, whether that is inside a company or outside a company. So that's really IT. And IT has evolved and is still very much an important part of how we do things today. Yes, today we talk about cloud, cybersecurity is still a thing. But I think what has fundamentally changed, particularly with the fourth industrial revolution and going forward, is that technology tools have now become available outside of the IT department and are almost integrated in almost everything that we do. So if you are in finance and you need to do your tax returns, more and more you are finding that having some form of digital literacy to navigate these tools is fundamentally important. Soon enough, banking, of course, has changed already, but soon enough, the way that you engage even with social services in the country, these things become important. So our ability to understand and pick up these digital skills in order for us to participate in a modern economy is incredibly important. Because if we don't do that, it immediately says to us that there are a whole number of people that are going to be excluded from the ordinary course of life, because more and more, almost everything that we do depends on this technology. So that distinction for me is incredibly important, and it should give comfort to people who may be intimidated by technology and have been told, or an impression has been created that it is reserved for a certain kind of people. It should now give them comfort to say, if I am interested in marketing, for example, and design, I can still pick up good digital skills so that I can use these tools that are enabled by technology to do what I need to do, right? So it's incredibly important that our mindset shifts from this concept of just IT, and rather understand something which is much more impactful and broader. And the word that I use here is rather digital, because that is something that permeates through everything that we do. So that's the fundamental difference between the two.
Awesome. Thank you, Bax, over there. A comment from your Liswa coming through saying, preach, Bakolile, preach. I want to jump onto the next question. And as I'm asking these questions, as we're still having this discussion, guys, I want to prompt each of you to please, if there are questions that you have and you'd like to ask, we've still got about 20 minutes for the session. So please get your questions in, engage with our guests, add your comments to what we're speaking about tonight, and they will address it before we log off this evening. Tech and entrepreneurship. Tech jobs are becoming more and more available in ways that they previously were not. 10, 15 years ago, some of the jobs that I guess we've ourselves find ourselves in were not in any sort of classifieds, were not in any sort of job listing before, and here they are. And in 10 years' time, we don't know what that change would look at in the future. As a young person, why should I be considering technology as a field of interest?
Sure. Loops, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm trying to think in my head what industry is not going to be touched by technology. For whether you are sitting as you're managing a factory and managing just movement of goods coming in and out. I was driving into a complex the other day, and the sort of device that they put on your nameplate, the number record plate with your ID, and connects that with your ID. So such manual work as a security guard is going to be with technology, embedded with technology on a daily basis. I don't have in my head that industry that is going to survive without technology. I'll speak about mining. So it's about extraction of minerals. Yet the biggest problems that have safety. Now you need an AI specialist to predict when likely, are we going to have a safety environment. Other point people want to make is where we likely have a particular unit, because the cost to manage the heavy equipment is very costly. So these are things happening in all industry. Now, your job-specific conversation. Marketers would tell you we are doing billboards. Now, we now know that people into the digital marketing space, people mobile marketing, because everyone is on their phones. And this is where you have pop-ups that are happening everywhere in whatever site that you are in. So digital marketing is layered with technology in itself. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking all companies in the near future, if it's not happening already, in some way or form are going to compete using technology. And to be competitive, and therefore they are going to need the kind of requisite skills to execute on that competitive advantage. And if you are not part of that equation, I think it's going to be difficult for you to actually participate. We now know that even work of accountants will be under threat because computers will be able to do that much easier and accurately than what individuals are able to do. So we have this balance of, we have these things that are happening at an industry level, but at a job level. So for me, I very much think this is going to be critical. Bax will maybe tell you a story about Rwanda, which maybe I want him to share, on how social services in Rwanda are on a mobile device. Now, there is no intermediate, and Bax, maybe you'll tell the story better than I do because you were in Kigali about a month ago. Do you want to share that one?
Sure, let me do that, Loops. So in Kigali, which is probably the cleanest city that I've ever been to, I was just incredibly amazed. There's not even a single piece of paper or chewing gum in the streets anyway. So it was really a breath of fresh air. But what was really striking for me is that if you look at government services in Rwanda and Kigali specifically, there is no physical money that ever exchanges hands between citizens and government officials. So every 2 kilometers or so in the streets of Kigali, there are cameras. These cameras are integrated into systems, and if you are caught speeding within half an hour, you get a notification on your phone with your fine, and you can pay immediately on the phone. So you don't have a place to withdraw money and perhaps sneak in a brown envelope whilst you are at it. You do it on your phone. And as a result, what that does for Rwandans is it frees up a lot of time so that they can actually do other things and become more productive. Because a productive society finds better opportunities to do the things that we all want, which is to create jobs, to be creative in new things that they could develop. But an unproductive society will always, of course, be stuck in the bureaucracy, which by and large may be unnecessary. So I agree with Luba. Technology is important because it's infused in everything that we do. And more, if one is going to be thinking about future products or services or even future work, this skill is going to drive literally all sectors in the future economy. And this is why it's important to really think about it and make sure that you have some level of understanding and competence in it.
Awesome answers coming out there from you, Bax and Luba. Thank you for that. And also, I think just to add on to that is to say that even industries like the creative industry, for instance, who you might think to say, okay, technology is never going to replace that. But yet we look at content, for instance, and the shift in terms of how content has been produced and then distributed as well in the last 2 decades has fundamentally changed. We see it in the fact that cinemas no longer have the numbers that they were used to before because we're consuming everything on demand. I think it's also another important aspect to understand that if you are in the creative industry and perhaps singing is your thing and you've always wanted to be a singer, how do you monetize that? Well, technology assists you to be able to do that. If you're an artist, right. What is the change that's been experiencing there? Well, yes, you still paint and you still use all the sort of mediums that you would to create art, but the way that's monetized is using technology. Again, through how we consume content, whether it's long form content like movies to short form content like a 15-second TikTok video, for instance. There's money being made at every instance. So if you are in the digital space and you're saying, yes, my talents lie in something that is physical and is creative, or in the design space, it's in no way excluding you from that economy. The better you know how to use the platforms that are available to you, I think, is the key here. Is that the more you upskill yourself in how to use those platforms and the opportunities and the features or functionalities that every platform has will enable just how much you are able to monetize it, to make a buck off what it is that you are doing. A question coming through here from Selena. What kind of people get the apprenticeships? I've been applying and putting my best efforts with no luck. What are they looking for? Specifically in South Africa, we hear this story day in and day out. What kind of people are getting the kind of jobs you're speaking about?
I think that question, Selena, is talking about the kind, because since last year, we've launched a product called the Global Virtual Apprenticeship. And what we were doing is really saying it's not enough to train young people for the sake of training them. Let's connect them with global apprenticeship, because the economic opportunity is global. And the kinds of companies that are looking for these new kinds of skills sits somewhere out there in the world. So we've connected with startups in India, in Europe, who are willing to work with us. And when our young people complete on our programs, they are able to participate in these virtual apprenticeships. And we've successfully done many of these to this point. And we would like to do a whole lot more for many, many young people. We've got lots of applications. I mean, I'll tell you, the last one that we did for 2 programs, which is about 100. And we had over 2,000 applications at one go. So we would love to offer more. And we are making contact with sponsors, not only here locally, but across the continent and globally, to fund some of these programs and co-fund these programs with ourselves to be able to offer a lot more. Selena, I'd love for you to have an opportunity, and I'll invite you to maybe reach out to us and even, talk to us, and let's hear. There are opportunities that will come, and would love to give more of young people this kind of opportunities.
Awesome. And I think on all fronts, this is a collective effort. It's not just government. It's not just the problem of big business or private sector. It's not just you and I. It is everybody on this call in their own way, I guess, looking within their own environment and seeing how they can make a difference. And I think that leads us to entrepreneurship. Back to you as a young person. I think it's easier now more than ever to become an entrepreneur because of the technology that is readily available at your fingertips to do so. Would your vote be for considering entrepreneurship as a viable career choice as a young person? And then why and how would you get into it?
Well, let me start off, Wade, by saying I have a different view in terms of entrepreneurship being easier. I actually think it's the opposite. I actually think that it is harder. We may get an impression that access to taking ideas and trading in ideas to make money is easier. But I think that's a very narrow definition of entrepreneurship. I think true entrepreneurs are much more interested in solving problems in sustainable ways. And they fundamentally believe and are hopeful that the money will therefore come. I always say to people that as an entrepreneur, I will try my best to stay the course as an entrepreneur. But if life happens and I fail continuously, because failure is inevitable in entrepreneurship. I fail continuously and I look to something else, I may well just resort to making money. And then people look and say to me, well, what do you mean? Because I thought entrepreneurship is about making money. Incorrect. That's why I hold this different view. Because, the guys who rob the money trucks make money. But believe me, those criminals are no entrepreneurs whatsoever, right? They are just plain thugs. But the outcome of money, right, should not be your definition of entrepreneurship. Let's start there first, right? Now, to your second question in terms of, should one, consider this as a viable, option? The short answer is yes, one should consider it. But I fear, Wade, and not to be controversial, but I fear that those that consider too much perhaps may not be true entrepreneurs, because the true entrepreneurs are already in it. They are not considering. If you're an entrepreneur at heart, you are not sitting dilly-dallying and making all manner of calculations. What you are already doing is being active, either active in terms of ideas at some level. And yes, you may not have a registered company or a specific product or service, but you are already active. You are not at the door trying to decide, should I come in or not? You have already jumped in head first, and all you are now doing is crying out for help to see how people and the ecosystem could better support you and enable you to be a lot more successful. So those are my views on, entrepreneurship and it being something that is viable. And I'll finish off by saying this. I really think that what is missing, if we're to really think about the South African context, is true entrepreneurs. Because true entrepreneurs are the ones who are bold enough to help us move the dial. They are bold enough to challenge the status quo, because it's in their very nature to create new value and to move society along in a positive way so that things can be better for more and more people. And I think that's really what is missing in our discourse, but more importantly, in the practical things that we are doing. We seem to talk a lot more about other things. And entrepreneurs, this should be a challenge to the true entrepreneurs, should be bold enough to stand up and announce themselves, because no one is going to invite them to the party. You don't get invited to this type of party. You have to impose yourself to say, we are going to take up the challenge. And some of the things we will figure out as we go along and align ourselves with those that we can work with, who can support us to help us build and get to a point where our impact is broad enough for us to consider ourselves as successful entrepreneurs.
Bravo for the speech there, Max. I think that was incredibly inspiring, even to somebody like me who finds myself on this entrepreneurship journey already, but to anybody else out there who perhaps got into the room tonight and was not quite sure whether they should or shouldn't. If that's not a call to action, I don't know what is. And then also to say that that's how the ripple effect occurs, right? That's how that drastic change sort of comes about, in that when one person stands up and does it and I see that person doing that, it gives me the permission, I guess, to do exactly the same, to go after exactly what I needed. And I guess for the generation coming afterwards, to see other entrepreneurs who were once just dreamers, who were once just people who had restless nights thinking about how they solve certain problems, standing up there and saying, I actually did it, becomes a powerful tool in rallying others behind you and creating representation to be able to do that. Whereas in a country like the US, it's quite admirable to be an entrepreneur. It's quite easy to get into it, to find the tools that you need to ready yourself. South Africa is a very different ballgame. I think in wrapping up the conversation tonight, I wanna pose this question to you guys in terms of what do you foresee the future of South Africa looking like and work in South Africa looking like, particularly for young people?
Lobes, do you want to go first?
Yeah, maybe let me go first. I look at, and you know, the world is bleak, and we listen to social media and listen to the news. We feel like the world is bleak. Bax started off and said we are at a nexus of a pandemic, a climate change, and all of these things that are all seem to be happening at the same time. We are at probably the highest levels of unemployment, and it feels like something is about to implode. I definitely think that, you know, the tide will turn positively, and I think the new opportunities. And I think what we've got to take advantage of is these conversations that allow us, because these are new connections. Because in these conversations, we are now going to begin to find new value, find new ways of solving problems ourselves. If you look at what has happened in KZN, I was talking to some youngsters in KZN whom were part of our program probably in 2019 and 2020. They've been able to aggregate some of the data of what is happening and visualize some of the carnage of what's happened in KZN. As a result, they've been able to collectively put something together, which now is a company that, you know, is starting to help people to identify spots in KZN of people that have really been destitute and identify areas of those who need help quite urgently. So I do think that what is happening right now is really going to open up world of opportunities. I think for the longest time, we've been relying on a system that when we get out of school, we want to go get employment. And some of it is going to be forced. We're going to be forced to actually start businesses because of situations, but it's going to force us to be creative in our thinking, in coming up with new things. And it's going to force a lot of people to actually act and be vulnerable, because part of being an entrepreneur is also being vulnerable and letting yourself, being out there, making that call when it's the toughest and you feel like I can't. This guy is a CEO, and you put some courage to actually make that call because your conviction of what you believe in is so strong. So that's what really, for me, is really going to change. And I'm really optimistic. And I suppose by nature of what I do, I have to be optimistic about the world that I live in. But yeah, that's truly how I believe and how I feel.
Sure. I agree with Luba. I think things certainly will be better, but I think this is a function of our general outlook, both at an individual level and collectively as young people and as South Africans. I think the status quo and how things have been structured is going to run its course, and that will become more and more under pressure. If you were to aggregate all the companies that we have in South Africa and say, practically, how many jobs could they create? I don't think they would be able to create enough jobs for the next 5-7 years to absorb all the young people that are looking for opportunities. So we've got to be a lot more creative and go after the international market where there's bigger demand for us to be able to actually ensure that we create more and more opportunities. And that's going to require us to change our mindset. It's going to require us to understand that young people, it's going to be okay to actually work on a project basis and do multiple things at the same time. It's going to require us to say, I don't have to move to Johannesburg and pay 60% of my income as a young, graduate into rent and transportation. I could sit and have the tools and work for an international company, earn good income, but still sitting in a small town somewhere in Limpopo, for example. These things are going to influence not only how we work, but influence how we live, where we live, where, our social circles are, and it will influence family, it will influence how we entertain ourselves, etc. So it's a very important outlook that we must have. If we have this kind of outlook, I really do think that the opportunities are endless in terms of our ability to create opportunities, employment, and to excite entrepreneurs and really ensure that we create this new value. So those are my view on the future and the possibilities.
Wow. Thank you. I'm optimistic after hearing the comments from you guys. To anybody in the chat who still wants to leave your lasting comments for the guests, please do so now. We have run out of time, and what an insightful, impactful, and energizing conversation this has been. I think for everybody online will agree with me. So to you, Bax, and to you, Luba, thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you for availing yourselves and your expertise to a number of people, young people on the call tonight. I think that the platforms like these, opportunities like these are what we should be getting involved in more and more and more. We should be having more of these conversations. We should openly be asking the questions that we're too scared to ask, because if we've learned anything tonight, it starts with you. It starts where you're at. It starts with what your mindset is. Yes, there are many other factors we need to consider, and we've spoken about those. But at the end of the day, it's you that needs to go out there as a young person and take up space and be daring enough to make sure your voice is heard, regardless of what the noise around it might be. So thank you to both of you for inspiring. Not enough jobs, but enough work. Elelwani reminding us there she loved this webinar. So thank you so much for you guys for coming out. And to the Innovator Trust, thank you for creating this platform, Conversations to Innovate. Thank you for inviting us time and time again and offering content and topics and people that we can have access to that previously we would not have. So just a big thanks out there. And to everybody for joining. I hope that you enjoyed the session. To our guests, thanks once again, and I hope that you have a great evening. We hope to engage again further in the future.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.